Yo, 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 ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am back for another film review, this time Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Very quickly, I just want to say thank you very much to everybody who commented on the Barbie movie. I literally only saw those comments just now, your comments on my review of that film. And it was really nice. I didn't have any idea. I sort of thought I just dropped it there like a drop in the ocean, and I thought maybe no one really had watched it or paid attention, and it kind of inspired me to get back on here and speak to you. So, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm just going to say outright, first of all, because, opinions matter when it comes to us, because, well, it'll be explained in a moment, but my favourite Indiana Jones film is The Temple of Doom. Now, you might disagree. A lot of people do. Apparently Spielberg does, although I don't actually believe that Spielberg thinks Temple of Doom is as bad as he says, because the reality is that Spielberg had a big backlash because all of the stuff about Indians eating monkey brains and stuff like that, and I think that he just sort of thought, oh my god, we were only trying to have a bit of fun, and then it had a kind of bit of a tirade against it. Sort of pre-internet backlash, right? So he kind of rinsed his hands of it, washed his hands of it. But a lot of people say how incredible that movie is. It inspired so many different things. Quentin Tarantino says it's like one of the most kick-ass movies of all time. He says the movie's so kick-ass it created a whole new age certificate, because I think Spielberg invented the PG-13 with that movie, because it's so violent, even though it's a kid's film. And that's just the one that I go back to over and over again. That's the one that just blew my mind as a kid, and kind of blew my mind as a teenager as well. I love that movie. So that's my favourite of the original trilogy. Needn't talk about Crystal Skull, because this isn't a review for Crystal Skull. Yeah, let's not talk about that. That's not relevant right now. Let's just talk about Dial of Destiny. So, I heard a lot of good things about it from people I respect, okay? Not internet people, real people. Told me really quite glowing reviews. And I have to say, I was kind of surprised that for the most part, I didn't really agree. And I thought the film was really great and loads of fun for about 40 minutes. If you've seen it, there's this great opening, which I loved. That was totally, it felt like a leftover scene from the Spielberg-Lucas 1980s days. Loved that scene, and it was full of Spielberg tropes. It was full of one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing, and it's so completely overblown and over the top, and yet sort of believable, like a bomb falling through a roof and dropping on the floor and pulling the carpet with it as it descends into floors below, and all the Nazis are standing around, panicked, and it's just like, what else can go wrong? This is so ridiculous, but in a very excellent kind of Spielbergian fashion. Is Spielbergian a word? It should be a word, don't you think? Somebody add it to the dictionary. Spielbergian. It means magical, overblown, full of fun, good for the whole family. There you go, I invented a word, I think. Maybe it already exists. Anyway, that was great. I loved that. And then I thought when it brought us into the 60s, I really quite like that as well, and I liked it all the way up until Indy got on a plane and he flew away, and he ended up in an illegal auction. And there's a scene that's in the trailer which is reminiscent of the first film, where he pulls out his whip and everybody else pulls out guns. Up until that point, I was thoroughly invested, and I really, really liked the movie. And then from then on, I lost interest, and it started to make me tired, and I felt like it was overblown and overstuffed, and it was introducing way too many characters too late in the film, like Antonio Banderas' character, and even the little boy, who is like, he ain't Shorty, and I didn't dislike him, but if you're going to bring in a young boy, obviously the audience are going to compare him to Shorty in the Temple of Doom, and it's just like, that's a lot to live up to. So I wasn't crazy about that kid. I didn't dislike him, but I just thought, yeah, he's not as good. So that's like a bit of a miss for them, I would say. misstep. Here's the major thing that I dislike about the film. Two major things really, and I'll start with the shortest one. Number one is, I just mentioned Spielbergian magic, right? Indiana Jones has a lot of magic in it. It's that whole feeling of it's sort of believable. It makes the unbelievable believable, and it makes you believe in magic, which was very much a Spielberg thing to do. He's very famous for that, and things he produced like The Goonies are full of it. And it's like, oh, we're all going to go on this crazy adventure and we're going to discover the Holy Grail and something that'll make you live forever and something from the past that's going to change the future. But all of it's kind of steeped in magic. It's the undercurrent of a lot of what made Spielberg so successful in the 80s with E.T. and things. And it's very, very prevalent throughout the original Indiana Jones trilogy, including dark magic, like in Temple of Doom, where they discover these people who are, conjuring terrible magic, and a guy pushing his fingers through someone and pulling out his still beating heart, very Fist of the North style kind of. It's so violent, unbelievable, but still there's magic there, whether it's positive or negative. And this film seemed to be, it had some of that magic until they get on this plane and they fly out of America. And that's kind of when the magic is supposed to kick in, is when you go on the adventure overseas. But instead it just became like an adventure action movie. And it was like, where is all the magic? Now you're just in a car chase, and now we're out at sea and we're fighting against eels underwater. And it's like, there is none of this lends itself to the feeling of there could be something magical here. It's just staple action adventure scenes, which you could find in like any Pirates movie or something like that. Indiana Jones is supposed to be excavating these things and discovering ancient relics that have magic attached to them. Now, of course, the dial of destiny he's going for is supposed to be something that can take you back in time or move time, so that's magic, but it's like, that's not all the way through. That's just something in the opening scene and then close to the final scene. Now, so that was one thing that bothered me, was it felt like it sort of forgot that there was supposed to be magic as an undercurrent in kind of all of it. It just sort of forgot about that. But then the other thing that really, really did bother me is the film is so full of open-ended ideas that makes it feel either like you had, I think it's 4 writers. It felt either like 4 writers are all competing to try to get their ideas in and none of their ideas are finished. Or it just felt like a first, maybe a second draft. It's just an unfinished script. So to give you some examples, you've got the emphasis early on the fact that this is, now we're in India as an older man, and it's moon landing day, 1969. And the whole world is paying attention to the men going to the moon, and he's disinterested. And I was like, that's awesome. That's a great backdrop. This is like the great leap of science, the great scientific leap for America and the world. And you've got Indiana Jones, who's almost like an anachronism. He's a relic of the old times. Kind of on the other side of that, saying himself, magic isn't my thing. I don't really believe in magic, but there are things I see that I kind of can't unsee, is sort of what he's saying. But there's supposed to be a balance which is set up from the beginning of science versus magic. But the thing is the film never comes back to the moon landing. And it's like, it's a backdrop that then becomes completely unresolved and unfinished and feels very irrelevant. It feels like you're invested in something that never pays off. And I'm kind of waiting for some fruition, something where like, that's still happening, and while the world is, maybe you could even in the story make the world distracted by, there's a moon landing happening and everyone's watching that. Meanwhile, this guy's just discovered time travel and no one's interested and no one knows in it and no one even would believe in it. But it doesn't do that because it just takes you away from the setup and the foundation. So that felt completely unfinished, to set it up with the people celebrating at a party, and it never goes back to it. And then you've got other things like the opening sequence. You've got the Jesus dagger, where everyone's chasing after this dagger that allegedly cut Jesus, and he's like, oh, it's a fake, it's forgery. And it never goes back to that either. It's like there's no mention of it. Why were they looking for it? What was the significance of it? Is there any relevance that it wasn't the real one? Why do they need the real one? And it's like, no, it's just a thing. And it's like, well, but there was a lot of focus on that. Why is it there if it has absolutely no payoff and no reason? I mean, writers often say, like, in a script, you try to make everything relevant because there's only so much you can put in. And why have it in if it isn't relevant? And this film is full of things where it felt like it doesn't actually bear any relevance to the overall story, characters, or meaning. Then you've got things like his female counterpart in this movie, who I actually really quite liked. I was surprised going in. I thought I wasn't crazy about it. They're always sticking English people into these American movies, and I'm English, speak with an English accent. I'm English, but I often think it jars me. I think, why do they do this? Like, why does it have to be like this? But no, I really didn't have any trouble with her. I thought her performance was perfectly fine, but I thought the writing of her character was not fleshed out. So, for example, on the boat, she's doing card tricks, and they say, oh, she's magic, and then she says to Indy, he says it's a trick deck, and she says, no, it's the illusion that you have choice, but I'm actually pushing towards a certain thing. And I thought, well, that's something that can come back. Surely, the idea that somebody can have power over you, that it's the illusion of choice. I mean, many people say that about capitalism. Capitalism is the illusion of freedom, but in reality, you are being led and you are being guided, and your choices are being made for you. Is a rumor, but they say childhood, school, job, college, whatever. It's the illusion of freedom. And you could at the end have all this emphasis on time. What is time? What is time travel? Maybe Indy could have used this device in some way to say, like, well, maybe time is the illusion of freedom as well, but maybe he could subvert it and go against it. Either way, it's just something that was put in the movie that seemed like it could and should have relevance, but it didn't go anywhere. Another loose end. I also thought if she'd have, in the third film, when they're drinking the goblet, and you drink the wrong goblet and it can literally kill you and you essentially decompose and turn to sand, another thing that's very magical, which this film doesn't have much of. If you put the girl in that scene, you could bring back things like the card trick, where he could look at her and he'd say the illusion of free choice. You have all these goblets, but maybe they're subverted. Maybe they're subliminally pushing something towards you to make the choice for you. And then she could say, no, as someone who's, understands this, I know which one not to choose. Do you know what I mean? Just something that could have been brought in. And anyway, there's lots of that in the movie, and I suppose I won't go into too much more detail because we don't need this to go on for 35 minutes, do we? But there are a lot of things that it begins and there's no follow through. Another thing that really kind of did bother me. Now, I liked. There are spoilers here now. Okay, spoiler alert. Probably shouldn't watch all of this if you ain't seen the movie, but there was a scene that was quite good where Indy's talking about his son and his deceased son and how sad it was, and if he could change time, he would go back and tell him not to go into the war and blah blah blah. And it was good and it was well directed and it sort of hit the right notes, but I was sitting there thinking, it doesn't really feel like Indiana Jones, especially not the masculine go-getter Indy who's confident and brash and a bit of a rogue and a rebel, and I thought, I understand that you can give him some heart and you've got to try to explain why Shia LaBeouf isn't in this movie, but I still thought, like, you didn't have to explain that. And if you're going to explain it and you're going to have a movie that incorporates time travel, surely him saying if he could change time, the one thing he would do is bring back his son or tell him not to go to war. Like, for it to have no payoff again, like to have this very meaningful scene but have no resolution because he never even thinks to say, well, you know what, if we can actually go back through time, maybe I should actually try to do that. it's unfulfilling, and it's annoying because it's just another setup that doesn't go anywhere. And then when you get the kind of grand finale, I felt really like you could have removed Indiana Jones from the whole last act of the film. I hate saying act because it always sounds so in Act 1 and Act 3, but there's a grand finale of the film, and it's like you could remove him from the whole plane. He's tied up in the plane. He's wrong when he says, oh wait, Archimedes never could have known about continental drift. And then when he gets through the portal, it's like, oh no, he did know. I was wrong. So it's like, well, Indy doesn't actually do anything at all in that whole thing. His assumption is wrong. Then he ends up back in time, and then the girl brings him back to the present. But if you completely removed him, he's of no benefit to the whole final section of the movie. So it got on my nerves, because I thought they could have written in something much more relevant for him to actually do, or discover, or say. And then it bothered me that the girl starts saying to him, you don't belong in this time, you have to come back, this isn't right, blah, all this stuff. And I was thinking, why does she care? Like, she hasn't cared about him throughout the whole movie. Why would she care if he wants to stay in the past? What's the relevance? Why can't he stay in the past? It didn't explore that at all. Like, maybe he could have stayed there and it would have been a happy ending for him. In some ways, I thought it would have been a better resolution than bringing him back to the future. So that kind of got on my nerves. And then I was thinking, like, when it comes to time travel, if they've actually found the two halves of Archimedes' dial, Antithecatera, something, Antithecatera, something like that. They've managed to discover time travel exists, but it's as if you actually really think about it, the whole reason it ever existed is just so Archimedes could create it, because he's like, no, they needed you to come back from the future to finish it. But it's like, and then use it for what? Nothing. It's like, now you've got this time travel device and nothing, it's never used for anything. It doesn't really, it just falls apart when you start giving it some thought. And I found that really annoying, because I thought, well, you have set up earlier on that he's actually sad because he's lost his son and therefore his marriage. But then it's just like the girl just goes and gets in touch with his wife and that's it. And it's like, well, you don't need time travel for that. So what's the point? Why bring it into the story if that's what you're going to do? And I thought the first 20 or 40 minutes was fantastic. You got Indy running along trains, you got him on horses, riding through train cars in the New York train, and you got this incredible looking parade, and you got loads of ideas for the first like 40 minutes. And then at the end, he's just tied up in a plane and could literally be removed from the story at that point. And I just thought that was a stupid thing. One thing, it annoyed me a little bit, but the way the girl brings him back is she punches him in the face and he gets knocked out. And as usual, I'm watching this going, what is the likelihood that she can knock out Indiana Jones with a punch? Full grown, man. Granted, he's an old man, but this young woman just hits him with one punch and he's knocked out. I mean, most men can't knock a man out with a punch. You have to really land it appropriately. But it didn't bother me that she did it. It just bothered me that there was nothing in the script to cover the fact that it was unlikely. And I thought, at least in that, what the script writers could have done is they could have given more history to Indy and the girl. Because if he's her godfather, they could have had a scene way, 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 way back where he could have said to her as a little girl, like he could have been training her. And he could say, you might get into some scrapes and things as you get older, just playful, funny, Godfather type stuff with a child. And he could say, go on, give it your best. And then he could actually have taught her, he could have said, listen, I hope you never have to use this, but if you punch a man along the jaw, you can actually knock him out, even if you don't have a great deal of strength. Because not everyone knows that, and certainly a little girl is very unlikely to know it. But he could say, if you ever hit them just right, you can actually knock out a very strong, fully grown man. And then she could kind of laugh and something like that. and then 2 hours later at the end of the movie, it could come back in that the only man she ever knocks out with that punch is the man who taught her how to do it. And then at least that would have some kind of wraparound, something in the script that paid off, and yeah, they could have implied that I don't know, maybe she saved him in some way, but I didn't really like that, and I didn't like the fact that it's terrible. I'm forgetting names here, but his friend from the first film who helps him get the plane at the beginning, 40 minutes in. This is so bad of me forgetting these names. I'm terrible with names, always. I always remember the writers and the directors, but the characters, anyway. But his friend, who I always used to think looked a bit like Pavarotti, says, "Hey, I can come with you," and he doesn't. And I thought, why? Why not just? Is this the last movie? Just bring him along. He was in the first movie. Bring him along. Why can't he be in the film? I'd rather he be the sidekick than the little boy, who I didn't dislike, like I said, but at least that's a well-loved character. But to just plonk him in was another thing that felt like a thread opened up that doesn't really go anywhere. It was just like, hey, look, remember this character? It's a thing in Hollywood nowadays. They do it all the time, where they treat every movie like a reunion. Like if you literally go to a school reunion, it's like, oh, hey, look, remember Bob? Remember Susie? Remember? And it's like, oh, look, it's so nice to see everybody again. But this is a story, and a story is supposed to mean something, and things are supposed to happen for a reason, and there's supposed to be a payoff, and you invest your time and your thought and your energy to have it pay off, to have it be worthwhile. But to just drop him in and then go, oh, hi, oh, bye, and then he comes back at the end, oh, hi, oh, bye, is like, why didn't you just give him some relevance to the story? What's the point of that? But anyway, in the end, it just felt like messy. And the biggest criticisms I have is the lack of actual magic for about an hour or more. And then it was just all these open threads that have been opened up and don't go anywhere. And then the time travel thing just kind of got on my nerves, because it was like, well, now you've discovered time travel, what are you going to do with it? Nothing. Where is it? Was it going to be in a museum? Aren't there things Indy wishes he'd done? Does he want to bring his son back? You can't just have him want to do that and have the power to do it, and it never crosses his mind to do it. It's unfinished. You could have had it, at least have him destroy it. At the end of the third film, Indy makes a choice where he's like, do I take the goblet and potentially fall, or do I go for family and take my father's hand? He makes a choice. Well, you could have given him an ending like that in this, where he has to make a choice. Do I risk the future and risk all of mankind and use time travel? Or do I accept that time maybe is like the card trick? It's the illusion of freedom, but some things you can't go back and change, or some things you can't change at all. I mean, this would have been more interesting. You could have done it in a simple way, but at least it could have just been better written. But I have to say, I thought some of the direction was very good. I thought Harrison Ford was very good. I really had no problem with any of the performances. It's just the writing. The writing it really angers me, to be honest, because I watch these films and I just think, oh, just give me the script. just give it to me before it goes out, please. Just give me like 2 days with these scripts, and I will flesh out all of the problems. I'll iron out the problems and go, that can lead to that, can lead to that, and then we can have meaning, and we can fix this dialogue. And it's like, it's so kind of simple sometimes. I think it's simple. I literally just look at it. You got great ideas. Nothing's quite landing, but this could be an absolutely fantastic, huge movie, $400 million. But the script isn't finished. It's unfleshed out ideas, and so I disagreed with the people who said it was great. I thought it had great in it, but overall it wasn't great, and it definitely wasn't the original trilogy, and nothing for me is as much fun as Temple of Doom. I'm going to say one tiny final criticism, and then that's the end of this review. One thing I love about Indiana Jones, the original, is that it's always doing the absolutely ridiculous, but it's just ridiculous so that you believe in it. And it does it all the time. You look at Temple of Doom, it's like a guy could get poisoned and then chase after the antidote to the poison. So it's ridiculous, but you do believe it could happen. And then a kid could be driving a car, even though his feet don't reach the pedals because of these wooden shoes he's got on. And it's like, okay, that's ridiculous, but I'll believe in it. And then, oh, you could jump out of a plane if you just get the angle right with a dinghy. And it is ridiculous, and people debate it. Go, you can't do that. You can't land with a dinghy. And yet you watch it, you go, but maybe you could. Maybe it's just high enough to the mountain, and it unfolds kind of like a parachute. And if you hit the right angle, you kind of believe it. And everything's just ridiculous enough, but it's not so ridiculous that it's completely like you just clock out and go, no, it's just stupid. And I felt like this film really missed that. And that's very Spielberg, is when he teaches you, he sort of takes you to the edge of reality and the edge of plausibility, and he rides that like a surfer just rides the crest of the wave. And I think that's one thing we are so drawn to as humans, is, oh my God, to sort of make the impossible possible. And yet in this, it was like, yeah, it all seems kind of possible after they leave America. So, okay, yeah, all right, they're on a car chase. So, yeah, all right, yeah, they're underwater. All right, it's a long time before any time travel stuff. So I felt like it failed at that as well. So too many open ends, some time travel problems, was not riding the wave of possibility, and everything else I've already said. So not enough magic. That was the thing. So those 4 key points, and it could have been a much better movie. Anyway, I hope you like this. Thanks for tuning in. I tried to keep it short, succinct, sweet and short. I failed utterly miserably. We're at 26 minutes now, but that's how it goes, innit? All right, guys. Thanks so much. And if you like the movie, by the way, that's great. I'm really happy that some people are loving it. That's terrific. You know, more power to you. Maybe it'll inspire you to create some great things. So I don't want to take away from people's enjoyment. Just like to give you some imagination for maybe how it could have been even superior to what it was. All right, I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye. Bye.